Okay, we've received a thumbs up from our camera operator. Thank you very much. I'd like to call the meeting to order. This is actually our first council meeting, regular council meeting, that is being web streamed. I know that at least one member of our media, for example, who was at home or at a different venue watching this council meeting, and I know that there are members of the public who are at home watching that. I'd like to welcome them and have our clerk read out the first item.
Thank you, Your Worship. I'd like to invite forward our only presentation of this evening, Elsley and Yetty Foulds from the Royal Canadian Legion, Branch 263, and they're here for the distribution of poppies.
On behalf of Coquitlam Council, I'd like to welcome two of our favorite people.
Thank you. As October 31st is the opening of the Poppy Drive, we thought it was appropriate, for it's so close to October the 31st, that we present Your Worship and the council members with a poppy for the opening of the Poppy Drive. And also we have a book for you of McCrae. He's a soldier, he is a medic, and he is a poet. So we have a book about him, all about his history, so we thought it might be interesting for you to read. Thank you. Okay, give me some.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Hard. While they're handing those out, I want to acknowledge the Royal Canadian Legion, Branch 263, and the support that it has received recently from our City Council. We were at the groundbreaking of a great housing project that's affiliated with the Royal Canadian Legion at Laurentian and Austin, and certainly the improvements that are forthcoming perhaps on Cenotaph. And so we thank you both for coming out.
Okay, very welcome, and please, the council and Your Worship really helping the Legion an awful lot, and we really appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Robinson.
Thank you. Before you go, I want to remind everybody around council that the Poppy Drive, if I understand, is to raise funds, right?
That's right.
So.
Thank you. Thank you. And I should let you know that the funds are not the Legion's funds, they're public funds, and they can only be used for the veterans, for the hospitals, or the veterans' widows, etc. So, I mean, we cannot use that money at all. We have a special account, and it only goes to the community.
You should commute every Monday.
I might do that. Thank you very much. Really appreciate it.
And I thank Councillor Robinson for reminding us all and reminding the folks at home that when you see those veterans and others standing at the store and offering up a poppy, put a couple of bucks in there, please, because there's some great charities that those funds go to support. Thank you very much for coming, Yetty and Elsley. Mr. Clerk.
Item 2 on tonight's agenda concerns the minutes of the regular council meeting held Monday, October 19th. The recommendations to approve those minutes.
Moved by Councillor Lynch, second by Councillor Robinson. All in favour? Opposed? Carried.
Item 3 is the minutes of the public hearing held Monday, October 26th. The recommendations to approve those minutes.
Moved by Councillor Lynch. Moved by Councillor Reamer, second by Councillor Lynch. All in favour? Opposed? Carried.
Item 4 is the minutes of the regular council meeting that followed the public hearing on October 26th. The recommendations to approve those minutes.
Moved by Councillor McDonnell, seconded by Councillor Reamer. All in favour? Opposed? Carried.
Item 4 is the minutes of the Strategic Priorities Administration Protective Services Standing Committee meeting held Monday, October 19th. The recommendations to receive those minutes.
Moved by Councillor Lynch, seconded by Councillor Robinson. All in favour? Opposed? Carried.
The item of business arising out of that meeting concerns bylaw enforcement notice adjudication. It's a joint administration agreement with the City of Pitt Meadows. The recommendation is to give first, second, and third readings to bylaw 4039.
Moved by Councillor Asmundson, second by Councillor Robinson. All in favour? Opposed? Carried.
Item 6 is the minutes of the Land Use and Economic Development Standing Committee meeting of Monday, October 26. The recommendations to receive those minutes.
Moved by Councillor Reamer, second by Councillor Robinson. All in favour? Opposed? Carried.
Item 6.2 arising out of those minutes concerns third-party advertising signs. It's an amendment to sign bylaw 3873. The recommendation is that Council receive the input from interested parties, which took place at that meeting. And secondly, that Council directs staff to report back on the questions raised at the Land Use and Economic Development meeting on October 26 relative to third-party signs on private property.
Second.
Moved by Councillor Reid, second by Councillor Reamer. All in favour? Opposed? Carried.
The next item of business concerns School District 43. It's the 2009 Eligible School Sites Resolution. The recommendation is that Council accept the proposal submitted by School District 43, noting that discussions regarding the size of the elementary school site included in the ESSP in connection with Fraser Mills are underway, and that staff will work with the school district to finalize the size of this school.
Second.
Moved by Councillor Robinson, second by Councillor Reamer. All in favour? Opposed? Carried.
Item 6.4 is a preliminary report on an application for zoning amendment bylaw 4067 and includes a 5% park dedication requirement for a proposed subdivision at 1385 Coast Meridian Road. The recommendations that Council give first reading to bylaw 4067, that bylaw 4067 and its related application be referred to public hearing, and that the property owner of the proposed subdivision provide 5% cash in lieu to meet the parkland dedication provisions in the LGA.
Recommendation.
Second.
Moved by Councillor McDonnell, second by Councillor Reamer. All in favour? Opposed? Carried.
Item 6.5 concerns a citywide official community plan amendment bylaw 4072 and a rezoning amendment bylaw 4074 for property at 3407 Galloway Avenue. The three recommendations are that Council give first reading to bylaw 4072, that Council give first reading to bylaw 4074, and that these two bylaws and the related applications be referred to public hearing.
Moved by Councillor Reid, second by Councillor Robinson. All in favour? Opposed? Carried.
Item 6.6 is a proposed road and lane cancellation near Burlington Drive and Pinetree Way. It's bylaw 4053. The recommendations that Council give first, second, and third readings to bylaw 4053 and direct that this bylaw be advertised in accordance with the requirements of the community charter.
Moved by Councillor Lynch, second by Councillor McDonnell. All in favour? Opposed? Carried.
Item 6.7 is also a proposed road cancellation application. It's adjacent to 710 Alderson Avenue. It's bylaw 4065. Recommendations that Council give first, second, and third readings to bylaw 4065 and direct that this bylaw be advertised in accordance with the community charter.
Second.
Moved by Councillor Robinson, second by Councillor Lynch. Councillor Asmundson.
I'd like to have this referred over to a closed meeting. It deals with city land, and that should probably be in a closed meeting. If I can get the support of Council to have it referred into closed.
There's a motion to refer to closed by Councillor Asmundson, second by Councillor Reamer. Councillor Reid.
It's already discussed in a public open meeting at land use.
Well, it is at the purview of any member of council that wishes to raise an issue that can't be raised in public to ask that it be referred to a closed meeting. There are a number of areas where this one might fall under the rules associated with an in-camera meeting, and I'm actually in support of that. There are some aspects of this that I think we might want to discuss, and it's certainly within our the right of a council member to ask that we refer it.
Well, I'm not challenging his right.
No.
I'm just saying that it's locking the barn after the horses go home. Go ahead.
Okay, any other comments? Question is referral. All in favour? Opposed? Councillor Robinson, Councillor Sikora, Councillor Reid are opposed. Motion carries.
Item 6.9 concerns local government at Section 879 consultation requirements. These are relating to a land use designation map amendment to the citywide official community plan Smiling Creek Neighbourhood Plan and a report on the CWOCP amendment bylaw 4073 and rezoning amendment bylaw 4075 for 3390 Galloway Avenue. The recommendations that Council, with regard to the CWOCP and having given consideration to Section 879, direct staff to seek input from interested parties in the following manner, are listed before you, and not require consultation with the bodies listed before you. 2, the Council give first reading to Citywide Official Community Plan Bylaw 4073. The Council give first reading to Zoning Amendment Bylaw 4075, and these bylaws and the related application be referred to public hearing.
Moved by Councillor Reamer, seconded by Councillor McDonnell. All in favour? Opposed? Carried unanimously.
Item 612 concerns the draft Metro Vancouver Regional Growth Strategy. The 4 recommendations on this item that Council received for information in the report from the General Manager of Planning and Development in connection with the delegation received at the October 26th Land Use and Economic Development meeting. 2, the Council directs staff to review the latest version of the RGS in light of Council's previously conveyed concerns and work with Metro to resolve any remaining ones. The Council designate the General Manager of Planning and Development as the City's representative to the Intergovernmental Advisory Committee. And 4thly, that Metro Vancouver be requested to consider and advise of the requirements for designating Coquitlam City Centre as the 3rd Metro Centre of the region.
Second.
Moved by Councillor McDonnell, seconded by Councillor Reamer. Councillor Sikora.
Thank you very much. This came before our Land Use Committee, and I voted against it, and I'll vote against it again. I think that we are allowing an elected body at the GVRD to make decisions in our community. We're elected to do so. Fact is that, can you imagine us having some decision of what's happening in Delta or in Richmond or Langley or one of those cities, that we somehow have a right to veto things that are going to happen in those communities when those people are elected to do so? And our board here at the GVD used to be a bunch of elected bodies, used to be run for GVD and got elected by the taxpayers. Now it's not. It's a bunch of people that are from different communities. The non-elected body will stop developing in certain communities. The fact is that, in this agricultural land alone, that if you want to take a piece of land, agricultural land, you have to go to a public hearing at the GVD, with the GVD board sitting there. And the GVD board decides whether it should come out or shouldn't come out. I mean, it's just like having a chicken farm and having Colonel going away on holidays and asking Colonel Sanders to look after your chickens. And while you're gone away on holidays, it'd be about the same way, So how can anybody, I don't know, I guess I'm sure that I'm probably the only one who's going to vote against this, but I'll tell you, it makes me shiver when the GVD can't look after their solid waste, they can't look after many other things, and yet they dwell into planning our communities for us. What should the population be, and what should the growth be in your community, and how should it be planned? I think it's totally out of hand. I'd rather, every 3 years we go to get elected. I'd rather have the people tell me, look, I didn't like the way you handled the last 3 years. You made a lot of mistakes on planning and a few other things. I'd rather have that happen than have some unelected body that's going to plan Coquitlam and reflect on the politicians of today. So I'll not be supporting it. Thank you.
Okay, Councillor Reid.
Well, the regional growth strategy, basically I think all the cities in the Lower Mainland agree we've got to have some kind of a plan in order to move people around, and transportation routes and highways and freeways, and sort of make the best of it that we can. I've had a lot of questions about this, as has every other member of council, but I think we have about 2 or 3 kicks at the plan, and we've sort of got all our ducks in order, I think. The one question I have, though, is that we're designating our General Manager of Planning and Development. Will you have an alternate that can attend every meeting if you can't, and will they be kept up to speed with you? That's a real concern of mine.
Councillor Reid has posed a question to Mr. McIntyre.
Yes, thank you, Worship. That's a very good question. And I would imagine, yes, I would have the ability to identify an alternate. That's certainly the way our representation on Metro Van's Technical Advisory Committee, the TAC Committee, and I'm the chair of that. Yeah. And I have as a vice chair, but also I have an alternate from one of our staff that I keep apprised of things going on. So if I'm unable to make a meeting, that person can step in. And I'm sure it'd be the case in this situation as well.
Well, it is. And from the last regional growth from the last plan that we had, I think every city has learned through all the things we've gone through in the past 2 years of trying to move something out, and what a cumbersome process it was. And hopefully that this is much better. And I know in our city I've had talks with Mr. McIntyre about moving. When we talk about the green zone, that seemed to be the most contentious, but we're still able to keep our properties in a green, so to speak, zone, just not in that one zone that's so onerous to move. And I think we haven't really changed any properties or any physical designations, but we've certainly changed them on paper. And I think every city in the region is sort of looking forward to working together, but not with the strings that we were tied up with before. Do you agree?
Your Worship, if I may, yes, we've made some progress in certain areas, and around the green zone or the green designated lands, there is maybe it's a little more sophisticated this time, so there's a little more detail, so it can take into account local community preferences on that. We are just at a point, Mr. Mayor, and for Council's benefit, the latest draft just came out, and it was discussed at last Friday's TAC meeting. It's going to the Regional Planning Committee this coming Friday, and if that committee supports it, it'll be going then to the Metro Van Board the following Friday, and then the city will be receiving it thereafter. So staff has started doing the review of the latest draft we received, because we want to get a report to Council before the end of the year, and then it'll be into the formal process in the new year. So we are moving forward, but hopefully we'll have something to you before the end of the year.
So my last question, Mr. Mayor, is that we are moving forward with this recommendation, but it by no means that we buy into the whole plan until we see the whole plan at the end. So thank you very much.
Thank you. Councillor Robinson.
Thank you. Councillor Reid actually started to acknowledge the kind of work that's been put into reviewing this plan, and I think our Land Use Committee, as well as other colleagues around this table, gave Metro Vancouver a lot of feedback, and to their credit, they've addressed, maybe not quite satisfactory yet, they still have a bit of work to do, but they have come back addressing every single thing that we expressed some concern on. I do support regional planning. I think we don't live in silos. We ask our city to not operate in silos. We cannot plan in silos. We're neighbors to other municipalities, and I think we need to have a regional focus. But I do think it's important to acknowledge that that Metro has come back with addressing all of our concerns, and we'll continue with the process, and I look forward to see what the next draft looks like. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Reid, did you push your button again?
I don't think so.
Okay. Thank you. Yeah, the recommendation before us is to receive the current version, the report before us, to ask staff to weigh in on it, and to designate someone to have dialogue with Metro Vancouver, and in the end, to make sure it fits within us. This isn't to accept the regional growth strategy, although I think everyone at the table accepts that we ought to be trying to make sure that our growth strategy is a regional one and not 22 little local ones. So I think it's obvious that we can support this one, because it's simply to give feedback back to Metro Vancouver about the current version of the regional growth strategy. Seeing none others, all in favor? Opposed? Councillor Sikora is opposed. Motion carries.
Item 7 is the minutes of the Engineering and Utilities Environment Standing Committee meeting of Monday, October 26th. The recommendation is to receive those minutes.
Moved by Councillor Lynch, seconded by Councillor Reamer. All in favor? Opposed? Carried.
The first business item arising out of these minutes concerns the snow and ice response support plans. The series of 6 recommendations include that the Boulevard Maintenance Bylaw be amended in order to ensure the obligation to clear sidewalks, that the city's policy not to routinely use city resources to clear ice and snow other than those adjacent to city's properties be the policy, that where city staff is able to allocate resources at an operational level to clear ice and snow in particular circumstances, they may do so. That parking restrictions, as discussed in the report, be enacted. That staff proceed with the Snow Angel pilot program, as discussed in the report, and report back later. And 6, that the report be sent to all Lower Mainland municipalities in order to encourage regional consistency in delivery of snow and ice services.
Recommendation.
Moved by Councillor Asmussen, seconded by Councillor Reamer. Councillor Sikora.
Thank you very much. I read this report. It's a fairly reasonable and good report. The fact is that, I'm concerned that it says that, there'll be issued tickets for people that do not clear their sidewalks, and I believe that that's I have no argument with that, but however, I do have an argument when people clear the sidewalks and our snowplow goes by and covers their driveways and everything else in. Now, how do we handle that? Do we go back and unplow their driveways, or what happens, or do we expect them to do it again?
Mr. Suzak.
Sure. Thank you, Your Worship. We are asking citizens and businesses to clear the snow, even though a snowplow goes by. However, we are saying that we will devote city resources to clear sidewalks really on a as-needed basis, depending upon the availability of our resources. We want to make it clear that it is a citizen's responsibility to clear ice and snow, but we also understand that there are particular routes that are problematic, certain arterials, for example. And when we do get into those problems, our intent as staff is to dispatch resources to clear sidewalks where we have those resources available. It's a balancing act. We don't want to enact it as policy because we feel that there are significant financial and liability issues if the city were to take on by policy the clearance of snow from sidewalks. However, if we treat it as an operational issue, we feel that that's a reasonable balance.
Okay, so
I hope that answers the question.
So if I'm hearing correctly, that if, let's say in Westwood Plateau, people where they live, that if you dig them in with matter of fact, last winter, there's one of our taxpayers cleared his land and cleared his yard and everything of snow, and then got snowed by the snowplow, got all the snow back in his yard. And he phoned maybe 15, 20 times and could not get no satisfaction on getting that snow removed. All I'm asking, will the city go and clean it for him because they created the problem?
Your Worship, on a policy basis, no. But we have more resources from Council, and we intend to deploy those resources on, like I say, on an operational basis. We think that committing to clear sidewalks unequivocally as a policy is potentially financially unsustainable. And it also opens the city up to some liability if you commit that you have to do that as policy. Our guidance as staff is to do it where we have the resources. Council's actually voted for more resources. They've granted an additional budget for ice and snow, and we are making arrangements to have more equipment and smaller equipment. But I cannot promise any particular homeowner that we can get to their sidewalk, ahead of others. We will be concentrating on routes like major arterials, Como Lake, Austin, and what have you, with sidewalks, if we are to undertake sidewalk clearing.
Thank you.
Councillor Asmussen.
Thank you very much. Through to staff, a good report. I think we've listened to the comments, concerns from the citizens of this community last year and the problems we've had, and we're trying to address those concerns. We put extra money into last year's budget for this so that we were able to put more resources for this year in case of snow and provide better level of service. The one thing I want to point out, and I hope people, is we implemented a Snow Angel program to help people who are physically unable, elderly, to have community volunteers come out and help shovel their walks. But this is a pilot program, and I want people to understand that. And the two pilot areas under consideration are Westwood Plateau area and the Como Lake Heights area. So it's not a complete city area. We're starting a program this year. We hope to be successful with it, and if it works in those areas, which I believe it will, we will then look to expand it. And I think this is another way, because when we have these snow events, the community has to get together and help everybody else. Neighbor has to help neighbor to get around the city and keep their walks clean. And this is just an area where people that may not have that neighborly help can reach out to a Snow Angel program to help keep their walks clear and help people get around the city when it's snowing. So I support this, and I'll be voting in favor. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Robinson.
Thank you. I have a question for Mr. Susak that sort of piggybacks onto what Councillor Sikora was asking. I want to know what measures staff will be taking to ensure that as they clear the roads, that they don't dump snow onto the sidewalks that I've just shoveled and cleared.
Good luck on that one, Mr. Susak.
Thank you, Your Worship. I'm going to ask Mr. Ivany, the city's maintenance manager, to offer any comments regarding the city's ability to commit to not to redump snow. Just as an introductory comment, part of the problem that Coquitlam has and many communities have is the actual urban design of our community. We have curbs and sidewalks right up against the roadway. Other communities have slightly different urban design where they have a significant width of boulevard that separates curb from sidewalk, which tends to be an area of storage. And that is problematic. It simply is the way we have built the city, and which presents us with the problems. But by way of introduction, Mr. Ivany will hopefully offer some further comments.
Mr. Ivany.
Your Worship, through our operational plans for minor events, we are planning on clearing gutter to gutter, which means all of the snow ends up on the curb and on the sidewalk. As the events get bigger, similar to maybe last year's, we'll be moving back onto the road with that snow. We won't be going gutter to gutter. We'll be trying to keep as much snow in the parking lane as possible. It'll reduce the travel lanes on the road, but for events like we had in December and January, it may be our only option.
So I have to tell you, I have some concerns with that gutter to gutter. I mean, I live in a corner house. I've got a lot of sidewalk. And there is nothing more painful than going through that sidewalk, clearing it. It's back-breaking work, only in 10 minutes to have more snow on my sidewalk that I now have to reshovel again. And because I live by an arterial, I think it's an arterial, what's spurway? I don't know.
Collector.
It's a collector, that's right. And it's right by a school, I feel obligated to continually clear it. I mean, I'm not alone, I'm just using my example. I would like to suggest that we don't do gutter to gutter, even for a minor event. I think that it's normally people park there anyway, so you can't park there when there's a snow event. I think that's the issue that Councillor Sikora was trying to get at, and that I think was some of the biggest complaints we had. It's people work hard to keep their sidewalks clear, only to have them, you know, as soon as they're cleared, have more snow on them.
Mr. Susak.
I don't know if I can offer immediate, problem solving within this chamber, but we're certainly open to listening to any comments and adjusting our operations to suit. We work for the city, for the people of the city of Coquitlam, and if they feel that they need a higher level of service and concern from city forces regarding how we plow, then we will take that into consideration. For a reminder, what council has done in authorizing additional money for snow removal is allow the building up of a fund that can, in fact, undertake significant sidewalk and snow removal operations. We can't really possibly commit to do that this year. However, if we have a number of years where we're able to build up the ice and snow reserve, we can probably commit in a few years' time to be able to provide the level of service that you're looking for. But right now, if we get another winter, like last winter, we will be funded only for the level of service from last winter. That's all we can do right now. But if we get a number of moderate winters and we're able to build up that ice and snow reserve, Council has then created an ability in the future to achieve that level of service that you're looking for.
Well, I want to be clear, I'm not looking for actually more service. I'm just looking for a different kind of service that maybe it's not gutter to gutter. Maybe it's just, as keeping those that we use those parking lanes as storage. Particularly in, maybe where there's collectors where you're going to be going by frequently. So just something to think about. For me, that was the biggest, the greatest number of complaints were about snow being dumped by the plows after they'd shoveled.
Perhaps a bit of clarity would be in order. When you were referring to gutter, that was primarily on our 4-lane arterials rather than 2-lane collectors that have a half a lane of parking, or were you considering that to be both? It seemed to me that we plow primarily the driving lane and not the parking lane and the collector.
Your Worship, our gutter-to-gutter is for all streets during minor events, which is a low amount of snow. As the event gets larger, we start reducing our lane width. The reason for that is we want to make sure that there are travel lanes available for the vehicles and that on-street parking isn't affected in forcing people to park out to the center line of the roads. There's also the issue of as the snow starts melting, it's got to get into the catch basins, which are located on the gutters.
Councillor Lynch.
I want to come back to the Snow Angel program there. I was wondering, I'm not sure if I saw it in the report there, I was wondering if there's been any other examples throughout the Lower Mainland or other municipalities that have used the Snow Angel program. I was curious, I see we're going to have a report back on the program results, and I was wondering if we've identified exactly what criteria we're going to use to say whether it's been successful or not. And cost estimated at $30,000 ballpark, and I see a notation to coordinating, training, and managing volunteers, but what else would this $30,000 cover?
Sure, I'll just give a brief introductory comment. Mr. Ivany tells me that Richmond might have a similar program. I don't have the details for that. I'm really not particularly aware of this kind of a program generally, even in BC. However, there clearly seems to be a demand for it, particularly in our community, given the topography and the geography of Coquitlam. With respect to expenditure, the $30,000 will be needed for a bit of training, some kitting out, if you will. We'll need shovels, we'll need scarves or what have you for the volunteers. I'd like Ms. McKay to comment more on the details, because it will be Parks and Rec staff that will be managing this in some detail.
Thank you, Mr. Suzak. We consider this to be a made in Coquitlam innovation. We would love to find a best practice out there, but we haven't found it yet. So we are inventing this as we go and treating this as a pilot initiative in the two areas identified in the report. As Mr. Suzak indicated, the costs are related to materials and supplies, very practical things like shovels and gloves, as well as identification for the volunteers and communication materials. This is a web-based service for registration, so that candidates that wish to participate in this by identifying themselves as not being able of shoveling will register online. So we have costs associated with setting up that web page and staff to administer the information, as well as the matching program with the volunteers. And so this is outreach to existing groups like scout groups and school groups who wish to participate as volunteers in this program, some training time for them, including some pre-snow physical conditioning in our fitness centers so that they can build up core strength. We wouldn't want volunteers having injuries, making sure they know how to safely shovel and not slip and have good public relation skills. So that is what the $30,000 is for. And the evaluation will be based on obviously the number of intakes that we take in, as well as service incidents, an evaluation of quality of program from the citizens that make use of the program, as well as an evaluation from our volunteers.
Okay, and I'm guessing that the most vulnerable populations could be elderly populations. Are we going to be requiring criminal record checks of the volunteers who are going to be out doing this type of volunteer service?
Yes, through the chair, we have an existing volunteer management program that does require that criminal reference checks are done, and an existing screening program for that. We are anticipating that those highest in need of this service may be frail individuals that may have a medical condition, and so we would be using similar screening techniques as other programs such as Handy Dart uses in order to assess the requests and make sure that these are individuals that truly are in need of this volunteer program.
Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Reid.
I have a question for Mr. Ivany. I live on a street that's probably a 13% grade, and it just goes around this giant corner. And in the winter, you pile high both sides of the street. There's sidewalks on both sides of the street. Why could you not, on streets like that are just, you know, they're not collectors, they're just regular streets, why couldn't you just pile on one side of the street, so that if there was so much snow like last year and we covered up one sidewalk, at least one sidewalk would be clear for people to walk on the other side, and the snow could be, and park, and then we wouldn't run into so much of difficulty. Because when you're on a street that's on a hill, all the driveways are like this too, and so everybody's out parking on the street, and you go to get in your car and you can't find it. It's hidden. And so I asked why we couldn't look at something like that, or have you thought about it?
We have thought about that, and we are looking at that. We've redesigned all of our subzones that we get to for the local roads, so that the zones that have a high number of roads with greater than 10% grade are the ones we do first.
Yeah.
And we are looking at different ways of plowing to eliminate just what you're talking about.
Okay, thanks. That would be good. And on the Snow Angel program, hopefully you're going to involve some of our businesses, you know, in a rewarding sort of way, because I think it would be nice to have a wrap-up thing when the snow goes and be able to have some kind of fun and some prizes or something for them.
And through the chair, thank you for that question. Yes, it is our intention to create economic development opportunities here. Many citizens may be challenged to do their sidewalk clearing, but may have the financial resources to hire businesses, small businesses in Coquitlam that provide this service. So on the web site, we intend to provide referrals to companies that do provide this service for people that are looking to hire. As well, we plan to discuss with the volunteers and the registered citizens that the service we're providing is restricted to the street or to the sidewalk clearing. Their responsibilities of being a good neighbor and citizen in Coquitlam to keep their sidewalk clear. But due to the nature of their condition, they may wish to have their driveway cleared or their front step cleared or something like that. That is beyond the scope of the Snow Angel program. We're not getting into doing clearing on private property, but it may be that that citizen wishes to negotiate directly with that volunteer or that group for that expanded service, and that would be something they would negotiate privately outside of the business of the city. So there might be opportunity for that youth group. If they wanted to provide additional services on a fee basis, they could negotiate that with individual citizens.
That wasn't what I was meaning. I was meaning trying to get some of our merchants involved for rewards and a party and something at the end of the winter period as a reward to some of these wonderful young people that are going to be clamoring down our doors to join the program.
And that's a wonderful new idea that we'll take under advisement. Thank you.
Well, it does seem like something that ought to be rewarded at the end of the year. The folks, what I've talked to anyway, would consider these to be angels when they come by to help them. Councillor Reamer.
Thank you. I'd like to thank staff very much for this fabulous report. It really does enhance our sense of community. It makes clear the responsibilities of our citizens and the responsibilities that the city has. I'm pleased about the parking restrictions, especially up on the Westwood Plateau, and I live up there, and I know what a nightmare it was last winter. I have a question with respect to the Snow Angel program, though. Those that will be served by the Snow Angel program will most likely be elderly citizens. And so I question the wisdom of having a web-based service because many of those elderly people may not have access to the web. And so I'm wondering if there is some alternative way we can affect that communication with the city without having to use the web.
Mr. Suzak?
Sure, Your Worship. I'll ask Mr. Wingrove to respond on communications, please.
Through the chair, there is a communication plan that's been developed, and it certainly isn't solely dependent on the website or providing this information over the internet. Certainly, it's an efficient way to present the information and convey it to our residents, but we also recognize that's not the only way that we can do that. So there'll be a series of other ways. Some will be direct mail and direct contact. There'll be a series of newspaper advertisements. There'll be information provided in city facilities and posters, and so there'll be a variety of means to communicate with our residents, not just the website.
And that includes putting the residents together with the Snow Angel. You're not just talking about the overall communication strategy, you're also talking about affecting the program.
That's correct, yes.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. And Councillor McDonnell.
Well, my question's been asked, thank you.
Thank you. I only wanted to make one point related to the Snow Angel program. I didn't hear Mr. Suzak mention it. He mentioned it at committee, but he described the program most aptly. This program is for the unable, to clear the snow for the unable, not the unwilling. This program is intended to help those people who simply cannot get it done. And God willing, we won't have as much snow this year. The motion on the floor is the set of recommendations in the staff report. All in favor? Opposed? Carried unanimously. I'd now entertain a supplementary motion calling for less snow this year. Moved by Councillor Robinson, second by Councillor Reamer. All in favor? We've carried that one as well.
Item 7, it's going to be hard to find an address to mail that to. Item 7.6 is concerns a requested variance to truck route hours. The recommendation is that the General Manager of Engineering and Public Works be authorized to allow Kiewit Flatiron to proceed with nighttime material hauling on Pipeline Road, David Avenue, and Pinetree Way, subject to conditions outlined in the attached report.
Moved by Councillor Reid, second by Councillor Reamer. Councillor Lynch.
I guess when I was going through this, I see this is quite an extensive period that we're going to be having the amount of trucks. So we're having as many as 50 trucks per night for a period extended up to 3 years. We talk about all the criteria that we're going to have in there and what we're going to ask the proponent to do. And I found it kind of curious that at one point where the report talks that the report identifies that the reason for nighttime hauling is to meet the tight timeline, and yet further on in the report it talks about the conditions that we're proposing is that the proponent will agree to cease the nighttime hauling operation immediately if directed by the city. And to me that seems kind of contradictory. At one point we're going to say, well, they have to have it, that's why we're kind of saying they need to do this. On the other hand, we're going to say, well, if the residents object, we're going to ask them not to. And I know we're going to have residents who would be upset about this. There's a lot of trucks over a long period of time. So I wonder if there's some explanation as to why we put that in there when on face value it doesn't seem realistic that we'd be able to say no to them if they need it to meet their timeline.
I'm going to preempt the answer a little bit. Like, I don't think it says that we would necessarily cut off the hauling at night if we receive complaints, but rather that we had the option if there didn't seem to be any other option available to deal with some issues. I'm looking at Mr. Suzak for an answer.
Sure, Your Worship. Our approach is that if the activity on balance is not of benefit to the community, then we would advise, council of that, and we would seek to cancel the haul. It would have an impact on the contractor. The contractor would have to secure another source, potentially in the valley to feed this project. But they find an opportunity with the gravel pits very nearby. The hauling time is minimized, and as you can see, we've listed what we feel are the benefits to the city. So we will have to be sensitive on the resident response and see how we can seek to minimize the negative aspects of this project.
So what that says to me then is that we're prepared to say we're going to offer this we're going to allow them to do this. However, we would at some point, and it says, if directed by the city, they will agree to cease nighttime hauling operations. And you're telling me that if we made that decision as a city, then that would force them to then cancel a contract with a local gravel pits and then seek another company up in the valley. Or somewhere.
Your Worship, we're not party to their contractual arrangements. We're simply making our conditions known very clearly, and the contractor would have to take that into account in whatever commercial arrangements he makes. My expectation is that they would continue to do business with the local pits, but because of the construction schedule, they may well need access to additional sources of gravel if the hauling times are restricted.
Okay. I wonder if you could explain to me then also, it talks about carrying out nighttime pre- and post-activity noise measurements similar to those noise measurements being done as part of the Port Mann Highway, and I'm not familiar with those measurements, how they're being done. Can you explain that to me?
Your Worship, I don't have the technical description of what is being done, but it is my understanding that the province is monitoring noise aspects of the Port Mann Highway 1 project. My further understanding is that actually very recently some concern had been raised near the Cape Horn interchange, and with that concern the province had directed the contractor to modify its operations to reduce noise. So the province has already established a standard, if you will, for let's call it acceptable noise as a result of construction activity, and we want this contractor to work at the very minimum within that guideline. However, this is also a residential neighborhood. We expect that the bar is probably going to be higher, and we'll be listening to any concerns that arise during this nighttime haul.
And I guess the point I was trying to get at to is I'm not sure what the government is considering, the provincial government or whoever is doing the Port Mann Highway considers to be an acceptable noise measurement, and how that would be reduced in some way. I don't know what type of measures that could be taken. We're certainly not about to build acoustic walls along there, I don't think. Or
Mr. Suzak.
I wouldn't expect any special construction to protect properties. However, there may well be a need to invest certain of the truck fleet with with special noise restrictors on their mufflers. I really don't know, but those are the kinds of things that they might have to look at if the concerns are unacceptable on balance to the city.
Okay. This will be my last question, although I have more. I was just wondering, talks about a 1-week trial period. Do we know when that's going to be, and how are we going to allow the residents to provide the feedback to city staff?
The contractor is required to undertake direct consultation with the residents that are adjacent to the route prior to any hauling being done. We want that done as a first step, and we want to see what the feedback is to their plan. So I would not expect the hauling to commence very soon, because they will have a public input process to go through, and we want to see the results of that public input process prior to the 1-week trial. I can't guess, exactly when it might be implemented, but I would expect, just practically speaking, it would be unlikely that they could commence prior to Christmas. But I'm just guessing.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Asmussen.
Well, thank you very much. This is a difficult decision. It's going to create impact on the community, but there's a lot of benefits involved in doing this. I mean, our aggregate task force and dealing with the Coquitlam River has been dealing with a number of years about the issue of fines and getting rid of the fines that continually wash in and make the Coquitlam River one of the rivers on the biggest issues of problems for fish habitat. So getting rid of those fines is a very good benefit. So that's the one thing about doing this and moving us to get those fines out and putting a use to them, because we haven't found many uses for them, and they've been quite a problem. The other thing is locally, the trucks aren't going to have to travel very far. If you look at greenhouse gas emissions, if you have to go to CWOCP, the extra distance in greenhouse gas emissions that you're going to have to use up in the region. So I think from those 2 points, it's something that we have to take those into consideration. The biggest noise you're probably going to get out of a truck or any big vehicle is the use of engine brakes. And I mentioned this committee, I'll mention again that the engine brakes need to be eliminated totally. There will be no use of engine brakes in the night hauling of the material out of the pits. The other thing that I threw to staff is that Kiewit is talking about monitoring, but I think it's important, I didn't see in the report, it's a recommendation, is that we have our bylaws inspectors go out on a random basis to monitor ourselves what the noise is out there and be on top of that from our city's perspective to our citizens. But this will have an impact to the people in that area, but there are also some very big benefits to this. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Reid.
Thank you. Well, the biggest benefit to this city, of course, is going to be getting rid of the fines. Those things that we've been trying to get rid of for at least 8 years that Councillor Donnelly and I sat on that committee with. It was one of our own engineers, Ken Wright, that actually got them written into some specs for us to try. And up till that time, nobody knew what the heck to do with them. I think if we start adding up the values, the economic value, not to mention the environmental value of getting rid of them and out of our city, it's going to be huge. I think we've come to a time in our city right now that we're going to have a lot of disruption. If we don't have trucks coming down Pipeline, they're going to be coming down off the freeway on Cape Horn. They're going to be affecting Low-Heat Highway. They're going to be affecting United Boulevard. You know already that we're in consultation with the businesses on United Boulevard for the overpass. All that area, it's a huge project, this bridge, and we're going to have noise problems no matter where we go. One of the good things that we have is that Kiewit has a very good reputation for living up to their contracts and their promises, and I just think this is a win-win for us. Not only, it's great that our local businesses get business from a big project like that, but for me, it's the environmental benefit that is going to be huge. We have mounds and mounds of this stuff sitting there, and we need it out of here. So I'm going to be behind this wholeheartedly. And you're right, if there is a problem and it's something insurmountable, they're going to go somewhere else to get their product. But I'll tell you what, it's going to create noise somewhere else. So it's in our city, and we're going to have noise on some road or other. So we're going to have to live with it. Everyone on Lansdowne and Pinetree and all those other streets lived for all the stuff that was going up on the plateau and everywhere else, and it's just something we have to get through. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Skora.
Thank you very much, Mayor. I'm delighted that we'll be able to get rid of some of that stockpile of sand that we have along the Coquitlam River. You know, that could be possibly, you know, after so many years, they stockpile so much that they will wash into the river. And I think that it's a good way of getting rid of it. The one thing I'd like to know is, what hours at night time do you, Mr. Zuzak, are they going to be operating under?
Sure, it would be overnight hours, Your Worship, outside of the bylaw. I believe the overnight hours would be more or less from 10 p.m. through to 6 or 7 a.m. However, there will be no hauling at night whatsoever during the summer, from about mid-June to I believe September. And the reason for that is people commonly have windows open during the summertime. There's a need to enjoy summer weather, so we're asking that this not happen whatsoever during the summer. They've agreed to that. This would be during the fall, winter, and spring months only.
And I guess because it's a long program that you have to give them a 3-year contract at once, it couldn't be split into 1-year contracts.
Well, Your Worship, they've asked for consideration for 3 full years, but as you can see in the body of the report, we've put conditions on where we could cancel these requirements at very short notice if this actually does not work out. Okay, thank you very much.
And it's that last point that I think is most important. This isn't a 3-year contract. It's we essentially have the right to cancel it at any time. For whatever reason, and I assume we wouldn't do that necessarily unless it was completely unreasonably noisy. Coquitlam City Council gets to decide tonight whether the gravel comes from Coquitlam or Chilliwack, and the environmental impact of it coming from far away, is enormous. And so we to me this is a win-win, as has been described. Right now, of course, if we were to have it come from across the river, the people in South Coquitlam would perhaps complain, because right now they hear the engine brakes from every second truck that crosses the Portman Bridge into Coquitlam, and we wouldn't have the clout of being able to enforce our bylaws as well as we can under this agreement. If we go through with this, I think we will have very good cooperation from a contractor that will make sure that the brakes get adjusted properly. There's no reason for using engine brakes in a city anyway. They're not for emergencies. They're simply to save wear and tear on the brakes, and they don't need to be used. And I think we can make sure that this contractor is very legitimately encouraged to enforce that one provision on every truck that's riding his gravel to the site. So, Councillor Lynch has one more?
Sorry.
You promised the last one was your last one.
I know, but I forgot. I wanted to, there was one question there related to dollars, so I'm sure you'd be interested in this one.
Okay.
In consideration the nuisance related to nighttime hauling, they've offered to commit 50 cents per meter taken. Do we have any idea what that might potentially contribute to our truck route system?
Well, sure. Through Your Worship, the city's current fee for gravel extraction at the pits is 26 cents per cubic meter. What this means is that for these materials, the city will receive approximately 75 cents per cubic meter. We think it's a reasonable compensation. We would apply any of those dollars to road repair and rehabilitation. On a broader topic of gravel mining and soil removal, my understanding is that at the 26-cent rate, the city receives approximately $150,000 annually from the pits on an average year for gravel extraction. I don't know the exact volume that will be consumed over a number of years, but I think that gives you a good context of the dollars that are available.
Okay, thank you. Thank you.
Yep. Seeing none others, recommendations on the floor. All in favor? Opposed? Carried unanimously.
Item 7.7 concerns the Strategic Transportation Plan update. It's a work program and public consultation. The recommendation is that Council approve the proposed work program for the Strategic Transportation Plan as outlined in the report. And 2, that Council, having given consideration to the requirements of Section 879 and other relevant sections of the Local Government Act, direct staff to seek input from interested parties during the 2 processes by conducting public open houses, undertaking ongoing consultation, and by forming a public advisory group comprised of residents, interest groups, and businesses. Direct staff to advise and consult with the organizations listed in item B, and C, not require consultation with the board of any regional district or other school district except as noted in the report, since none are considered to be affected. And 3, that Council direct staff to provide summary reports at key milestones on the results of public consultation.
Recommendation.
Moved by Councillor Atkinson, second by Councillor Robinson. All in favour? Opposed? Carried.
Item 7.8 concerns the Chines and Escarpment Steep Slope Hazard Assessment. The recommendation is that Council support the geotechnical assessment framework for this area as outlined in the report.
Moved by Councillor Reamer, second by Councillor McDonnell. All in favour? Opposed? Carried.
Item 7.9 concerns the 2010 Sidewalk program. The recommendation is that the sidewalks listed in the attached report, estimated to cost $300,000, be submitted for consideration in the 2010 capital budget.
Moved by Councillor McDonnell, second by Councillor Reamer. All in favour? Opposed? Carried.
Item 7.10 concerns the Coquitlam Lake Flood Buffer Agreement. The recommendation is that Council authorize the Mayor and City Clerk to execute the agreement between BC Hydro, City of Port Coquitlam, as attached in the report, and 2, the direct staff to include Coquitlam's share of the annual fee in the amount of $38,500 in the sewer and drainage utility operating budget.
Moved by Councillor Robinson, second by Councillor Reamer. All in favour? Opposed? Carried unanimously.
Item 8 concerns the minutes of the Recreation, Sports and Culture Standing Committee meeting of Monday, October 26th. The recommendation is to receive those minutes.
Second.
Moved by Councillor Lynch, second by Councillor Reamer. All in favour? Opposed? Carried.
Item 8.3 arising out of that meeting concerns the Colony Farm Regional Park Sustainability Plan. The recommendation is that Metro Vancouver defer finalizing their approach on Colony Farm Regional Park in order to allow the City of Coquitlam staff time to review the proposed plan and to provide input to Council.
Second.
Moved by Councillor McDonnell, second by Councillor Robinson. Councillor Lynch.
Just wanted to note that at the Metro Vancouver board meeting on Friday, this issue was withdrawn. So.
Boy, we're powerful. So this is a somewhat moot motion, but nonetheless, it's on the floor. Councillor Sikora.
I chaired the Riverview Lands Committee last Wednesday because Councillor Reid was sick, but I know that this is Colony Farms. But I'm wondering just how come that this could possibly go as far as it did without any politician knowing anything about it? I know I didn't know, and many council members that I asked knew nothing about it, yet it sprung up here, and apparently some of our staff were involved, and I understand it was minimal amount of staff time, but I can't see it being minimal amount of staff time if this much work has been done and what they had planned for it.
Well, to begin, Metro has been unwilling to give us a seat on the Parks Committee. We're working very hard, and I think they've heard us this time, but as you know, Council requested a seat on the Parks Committee because we have 2 very significant Metro Vancouver parks in our city, and one of them, I guess, we now find out is undergoing a significant planning process that we ought to have been party to. I see Mr. Stevlin wants to have some information?
Yeah, I just wanted to highlight that I agree with the concerns stated that, and I think everybody involved in this process now has a better appreciation that the elected officials from Coquitlam have to be at the table for these kind of issues. I think the Metro staff that came to the Parks and Rec Committee last week, it became very clear to them that they should not have gone so far down the road in terms of developing their draft plan without having sought an audience. They were very quick to respond to our request to actually come to the Parks Committee to give a briefing, and they now are they were very quick to agree with our suggestion that they take it off the board meeting until we could have a further in-depth council report on the issue. So I think we got the message across this time.
Yeah, I think you're correct there, but the fact is that this committee that I was chairing for Councillor Reid on last Wednesday was all the people there were up in arms, and there was a gentleman there from I guess from Colony Farms that had said exactly what's going to take place in there, and it's shocking of how much work they had done. And have something like that come to your community that the community didn't know anything about it is shocking. So I'm sure that some of our staff must have put in a lot of hours in there discussing it without the management or the politicians knowing anything about it. And certainly I can tell you that that committee that I was chairing were up in arms over this. So I'm just delighted that finally GVD pulled it off the books. Thank you.
You, Councillor Reid.
Well, as I told you about a month ago, there was a little paragraph that came up at Metro, and I asked and inquired about it, and I was told, oh, don't worry, staff is involved in it. It looked like some little innocuous thing, a little shed they were going to be building somewhere. And they said, oh, your staff is involved in it. I thought, that's odd. I haven't heard anything about it. And I spoke to 2 members of the committee, and then it came forward. I still don't know how, if staff gets involved at Metro on something like this, how come we don't know? Not just on this one, but on anything. I thought, wouldn't they report through to you, Mr. Steblin, or not?
The first I heard about it was a few days before last week's Park and Rec Committee,
I know.
when the GBRD staff sent it forward. As we unraveled it, initially they advised that one of our drainage techs, Mike Carver, had been involved. So I asked Mike. He said he was asked to attend on an emergency basis with about a day's notice to give some advice on the drainage issues. That did not seem adequate at all. Later, it turned out that other staff had been involved in a very tangential way, but it was never in a coordinated way. The way this thing unfolded is the Metro Vancouver staff asked for involvement of our staff in not a real coordinated sense. I think all of us through this process are more aware of the need to run it up the flagpole when these kind of events happen, to very quickly bring it to this council's attention. And I think everybody that was involved in this have a heightened appreciation of the need to do that.
We didn't ask last year, though, for anyone to be on park.
Yes, we did.
Last year?
We very specifically asked for a council rep to be on the Metro Parks Committee, and it was in the context of an issue out at Minikata that we were involved with Gillies Trail, and we thought there would be some synergies there. I very specifically had a number of discussions, and we added it onto our formal request, but that did not come to be. We reiterated that request in my email exchange with them.
I saw that. I didn't think we'd done it last year.
We had done it last year. It was in the context of the Minikata report, and as the mayor indicated, we have 2 significant Metro Vancouver parks in our jurisdiction, and we believe very strongly that we should have a rep on the Parks Committee.
Thank you very much.
Now, on the plus side, we've gotten our message across about the membership on the Parks Committee. I suspect that that's a request that can no longer be ignored. And I'm really reluctant to have this perceived as a negative response to what I think is actually a pretty interesting plan. I just wish we had been involved as a council, as Councillor Sikora and others have said, at a much earlier stage. Metro Vancouver has said, the Parks staff have said, that this is one of the most ambitious, and this is a very ambitious plan that they have, and I think it presents some real opportunity for Coquitlam. But for us to come in at this late date is unfortunate, and I think they regretted the fact that it was clear we weren't involved, and that our staff didn't feel like they were involved at such a level, or that the plan had progressed to such a level that they needed to report to us. And so I think they have learned, we have learned as well, and I think in the end we're going to end up with a better plan coming out of this, but also perhaps a seat at the table. I would argue aggressively that we need a seat at the table because these two parks are really significant to Coquitlam. So, is that a motion to receive?
It's a motion to defer. We would continue to send this motion on to Metro Vancouver.
That's right. Okay. All in favor? Opposed? Metro Vancouver will be advised of our wishes.
Thank you, Your Worship. Item 8.4 concerns the Cultural Services Strategic Plan. It's update number 5. The recommendation is that Council receive the information which is found in the minutes concerning a presentation on the strategic plan, and 2, that staff be directed to consult with the community on the draft plan. And finally, staff are asked to develop a proposed public art policy for Council's consideration at a future meeting.
Second.
Moved by Councillor Asmussen, second by Councillor Robinson. Councillor McDonnell.
Thank you. We had a good discussion at the meeting about the cultural strategic plan, and of course one of the things that came out of this was a proposed public art policy, which we don't have here in our city. We all think it's a very good idea, and I would like to suggest that we put a 6-month diary date on this so that we come back to committee, make sure it doesn't get sidetracked somewhere along the line. Thank you. Okay, there's a motion to amend for a 6-month time frame on the public art. That's seconded by Councillor Robinson. Any discussion on the amendment? Seeing none, all in favor? Opposed? The amendment carries. The motion as amended. Any further discussion? Seeing none. The 2 recommendations, the second one has a 6-month time frame. All in favor? Opposed? Carried unanimously.
Item 8.7 is the appropriation of funding. It concerns DCC Parkland Acquisition Bylaw number 4070 for future parks in Northeast Coquitlam. The recommendation is that this bylaw be given its first 3 readings to appropriate $2.4 million from the DCC Parkland Acquisition Reserve Fund.
Moved by Councillor McDonnell, second by Councillor Reamer. All in favor? Opposed? Carried.
Item 9 is the City of Coquitlam Housing Agreement, Bylaw 4060. It concerns 2601 Spurway Avenue, 1160 Lansdowne Drive, and 1636 Reagan Avenue. The recommendation is that Council approve the housekeeping amendments to Schedule B and C of Bylaw 4060 as described in the report, and that Council give consideration of 4th and final reading of this bylaw.
Moved by Councillor Robinson, second by Councillor Lynch. All in favor? Opposed? Carried.
Item 10 is a report of the General Manager of Leisure and Park Services. It relates to 2009 active grant eligibility criteria. There's some additional information provided to Council. The recommendations that Council receive for information, the report from the General Manager of Leisure and Parks, B, endorse the 2009 Coquitlam active grants eligibility criteria, and C, direct staff to report back with a recommendation for disbursement before the end of 2009.
Moved by Councillor Reamer, second by Councillor Asmussen. Councillor Robinson.
Thank you. I have a question and I guess a comment. Thank you for taking in all that feedback and incorporating it in here. I particularly like how you've done the application form revenues and expenses. I think it's really clear, really easy to read, 1 page, double-sided. It's great. The question that I have is the request, and I believe I understand what the thinking was. Just trying to find where it is. We asked for their list of the members with their addresses and phone numbers, and I just want to understand if that is a breach of privacy. So when you're an organization and you get your members' contact information, you say that you're not going to share it with any other body, and here we're saying that they have to share it. And I'm a little concerned that that might be an unreasonable request. We may need to ask how many come from which cities. I think we can do that, but I don't believe we can provide that personal information.
Ms. McKay.
Thank you for the question. We're not aware that we're contravening any privacy laws, but we will follow up with our legal services staff to confirm.
Excellent. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Sikora.
Thank you very much. I'd like to see maybe we find out just who gets these grants way ahead of time. The fact is that maybe all the applications that we get, because in northeast Coquitlam at the Victoria Hall, the gentleman applied for $4,000 for scouts. And in that area, there's very little movement of anything, you know, as far as that part of the community is concerned. He wanted it for equipment and a few other things, and he was turned down flat. And this is for scouts and guides. And I couldn't think of anything better that we can fund for the kids in the area, and yet he was turned down. And I don't know why.
Ms. McKay.
Yes, thank you for the question, and we are aware of a large number of groups that have very strong requests for very needed equipment. The focus of this particular program, the priority will be on attracting new participants, but I can assure Council that we will bring forward the applications, and it will be Council's decision as to how they want to disperse these funds.
And also because the hall is, you know, between Port Coquitlam and Coquitlam, and the fact is, you know, the kids not only from Coquitlam but from Port Coquitlam, and I'm just wondering whether we're still using that criteria that if 50% are not Coquitlam children or sports people, the grant is denied. And I thought that this council had lowered it to 40%.
Ms. McKay, could you set that up?
Yes, in this particular program, the committee supported the idea of a 60% residency requirement. So to be eligible for this particular program, it is the recommendation of the committee that 60% of participants should be from the city of Coquitlam. And I understand the rationale to be that these are city of Coquitlam taxpayer funds, and that while they recognize that many groups do have members from throughout the Tri-Cities area, they're looking to allocate these funds for the most benefit to Coquitlam taxpayers.
And I know that, you know, 60% hasn't been around for at least 2 years or 3 years. We had lowered it to 50%, but I thought we had lowered it to 40%. But I think that we should also look at some guideline, and when you're on a border of Coquitlam, Port Coquitlam, that the fact is that probably you'll get more from Port Coquitlam than Coquitlam, that they not be turned down. It's
Could I get clarification on that point? Several council members took issue with that one. What is the percentage now? Is it 50%, as Councillor Sikora puts forward, or?
It's 60%.
60%. That's what.
I know it's 50%, but I think that this council need to maybe look at it and look at it, you know, in a serious manner to see why that even this 50% should exist. If it's something good for that part of the community, and you know, that it should be granted, but it's not granted. And I know that there also was a baseball team that got turned down right at the counter. The application didn't even come forward because they were told that, oh no, they don't have 60% of the kids playing ball from Coquitlam, so don't even bother putting the application in. Well, I find that a little strange.
Are any of the groups that have 60, do we have enough applicants that have 60% or more Coquitlam residents to turn down some?
We haven't yet announced this grant program. We expect there will be a lot of groups that will be eligible to apply, even with the 60% residency requirement. Many groups have found that they have had less funds available from other sources of funding, so we do expect that it will be quite competitive to secure funds from this particular program. We won't know, of course, until we see those applications coming in. We will bring all those applications forward to Council for their deliberations on how they wish to allocate the funds.
My question was more, in past years, has it been oversubscribed in programs like this where the threshold was 60%?
This is a new program, so we don't have history.
You're done? Okay. Councillor McDonnell. No. Go ahead.
No, just took myself off.
Oh, you did. Councillor McDonnell pulled himself from the speakers list. No other speakers. Motion on the floor. All in favor? Opposed? Carried unanimously.
Item 11 concerns the Metro Vancouver Board and Brief. The Metro Vancouver Board representative is available to respond to questions, but the recommendations that Council receive for information in the Board and Brief.
Moved by Councillor Raymer, seconded by Councillor Robinson. All in favour? Opposed? Carried.
Your Worship, that's the final formal item on tonight's agenda.
Thank you very much. I see Councillor Asmundson for items around the table.
Thank you very much. I'd like to have Council send a letter to TransLink. At the changing with the Canada Line opening up, bus service from Tsawwassen and South Delta, Steveston area is highway coaches. And those highway coaches are now all just going, rather than downtown Vancouver, to the Bridgeport station. What I would like to have the support is that those highway coaches be brought and some used on our 160, 190 line from Port Coquitlam to Vancouver, which from Port Coquitlam is an hour and 5 minutes, and from Coquitlam Station is 55 minutes. I think it would be a proper use of the service and bring better service to the residents of Coquitlam going downtown. And it's not a cost issue, it's just a transferring of equipment. So I'd like council support to have a letter sent to TransLink, because I've also talked this over with our transportation staff, and they are in support of this request also. Thank you.
Okay, we'll begin with Councillor Asmundson asking for waiving of procedure for the one council meeting notice, seconded by Councillor McDonnell. All in favour of waiving procedure? Opposed? Councillor Lynch is opposed. Motion carries. Councillor Asmundson's motion is as stated.
As stated.
Councillor McDonnell seconds. Councillor Reid.
It's transferring equipment. What equipment? Different buses?
A different bus. You're taking a bus that is presently your regular bus to a highway coach. So all they're going to be doing is moving equipment around. There is no cost involved to TransLink. You are now providing...
So it's not going to be a big fancy bus, like a really nice bus.
It's going to be a really nice high back seats and everything. It's going to be a very nice...
That's what I want. Coffee?
No coffee. No. But it'll be a higher level of service for our residents out here, and those buses used to take those people downtown, and since they're no longer going downtown, they're going to the Canada Line, that the people in Coquitlam should have that level of service because they're on a long trip to downtown.
What is the...
Could we activate Councillor Reid's microphone, please?
I thought it was.
Sort of was, but we kept flipping back if there was a discussion.
So what's the criteria for getting one of the fancy buses? Because maybe I want one for every route. Is there a criteria, like it has to be over an hour or something?
It has to be on a longer route, and it has to be on a route that is intermunicipal, so from Vancouver to Coquitlam and back.
Okay.
But it's something for the 160 and the 190 as an express route, limited service morning and afternoon. But it's something that would improve the level of service. It would be a level of bus service matching that of your West Coast Express and the type of seating and comfort for people going downtown.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, and in the interest of speed, I permitted that dialogue, but we'll be back to the speakers list. Councillor Lynch.
I don't think that's sped up the process
Didn't
at all.
speed it up, I know.
And I need to ask, what's the urgency that we need to send the letter off today? Like what? The reason we have a notice of motion procedure is so that we have the adequate information before us. And I don't doubt that probably what Councillor Asmundson is saying is true, but I have no idea of evaluating this, and I certainly don't want to look like I'm uninformed and sending letters off to bodies requesting services that I have no idea whether it's appropriate or not. And I thought that was the reason that we allowed 2 weeks. Councillor Asmundson says he's talked with staff. This is the first I've heard of it. I've been here since 3:30. Nothing was mentioned to me, oh, this is coming up later. I would like to have adequate information before I start asking this council to put their endorsement on a letter to another body.
Thank you. Councillor Skor.
Thank you very much. To me, I'd like to have more information too. But however, we are probably the only municipality that has adopted a silly policy that we've lived with years, a notice of motion. And a notice of motion on a whole lot of things that really never took place before, but it's taking place now. And I'll tell you something, it's taken council members one hell of a lot of time to get something on the table. A notice of motion, notice of motion, notice of motions. You take like the notice of motion served on this HST. It had to be a notice of motion. Port Coquitlam did it in one night. It was a motion by a council member, seconded, and it was dealt with. not in these council chambers, it's a notice of motion. And it bothers me. You know, do I want more information? Of course I'd like to have more information. But it sounds reasonable to me that we, as a council, got rid of notice of motions.
The procedure of notice of motion predates me on council. I think it goes back to the time when Councillor Sikora was mayor, perhaps, but I don't know how to resolve that one.
It has been on the procedure bylaw for quite some time. There is a provision in the procedure bylaw that requires a 2/3 majority in order to waive that procedure, which is the vote that just took place. So there is always a mechanism to allow immediate consideration of urgent items or things. Yeah,
but we could also just forget about the notice of motion if council wishes so, right? And not have a notice of motion.
Councillor Sikora, council did review the procedure bylaw and voted on it just a month and a half ago, I think. That was one of the things that was considered, I expect, and council decided not to change it. Council could change it, but right now there's a procedure in place that says you require a notice of motion, and part of the reason for that is so that we can get enough information before us to make informed decisions.
Mayor, I'm not trying to get into an argument with you.
Councillor Sikora, Councillor Sikora, I let you speak.
Okay, go ahead.
And part of the reason is so that we can have enough information before us to make informed decisions on matters. And part of the dialogue that happened tonight gets obviated by the notice of motion procedure. But nonetheless, council did set it aside tonight. Did you have any further comments?
I understand exactly what took place. And there wasn't a unanimous vote on a lot of the procedures.
It wasn't.
Majority rules. Majority rules. But at the same time, I think it's a silly thing that we have a notice of motion. I mean, like today, I can vote against it and defeat it and have it say it has to be a notice of motion. And I think it's a silly thing to do. But that's what we've adopted in these council chambers, and it's unfortunate. And I think that the mayor should show a little leadership and maybe bring some to council that will be more adaptable to this council.
Well, I don't know that leadership says I have to ignore the will of council. Council voted for a notice of motion procedure, and we're sticking to that. We set it aside for tonight by vote of council. Councillor Lynch.
Well, the notice of procedure bylaw predates me also, but I believe I was in the audience sitting watching council at the time, and it was because there had been a series of knee-jerk reactions by this council that made them look rather foolish because they were making decisions based on information that they didn't have prior knowledge of. And if it's urgent, I'm quite happy to say it's urgent. And I requested and I didn't get an answer. I don't know what the urgent nature of this business is, why we needed to waive notice of motion.
Well, I'll permit a second round to perhaps answer the question. Councillor Asmussen.
Well, I was to bring this up at committee, but we ran out of time due to the Metro Vancouver coming back in. I didn't have time for it. It is not a complicated issue that we're asking here. Is changing a level of service for the people in the area. But having said that, if people feel that they need more information, they need more detail on a changing of a type of bus from a regular bus to a highway coach to add better service, I will then make this a notice of motion and we will have it back at us in 2 weeks. The issue is to send the letter so that they can plan that at the earliest date if they do make the change. But once again, I can acquiesce that this come back in 2 weeks.
Well, the motion's on the floor now. Council's already made that decision. So if someone wants to move deferral for 2 weeks, that's fine too. But right now there's a motion on the floor.
It's not complicated.
Okay. Councillor Lynch, do you have something else?
Yes.
Okay.
It doesn't matter whether it's complicated or not. There's no facts before us other than a person's verbal report, and I can't imagine any other level of government that we'd be doing this without having adequate information beforehand. And we've always said that we're going to ask staff to provide us with some information. Councillor Asmussen said he's discussed this with staff. He could have brought this up before now. He could have brought it up closed, and I simply think that if there's no sense of urgency, we don't need to insult people's intelligence by saying that it's not a complicated issue. This is an issue that there should be prior information before. And I'm not about to put this city's reputation on the line by sending letters to other bodies on a verbal report at the last minute of a council meeting when it's not urgent.
Is that a motion to defer?
I'll move a motion to defer.
Okay. Councillor Sikora seconds the motion to defer to allow for 2 weeks more time. All in favour of deferral? Opposed? I see Councillor McDonnell, Councillor Reamer, Councillor Asmundson opposed. Motion to defer carries. We'll consider that in 2 more weeks. Was there anything else? No other items? Motion to adjourn will be in order.
I'll move.
Move by Councillor Robinson, second by Councillor McDonnell to adjourn. All in favour? Opposed? Carried. It's a question period as per our procedure. Are there any questions on tonight's agenda? Seeing none? No. Oh, okay.
Hello, Elizabeth Baldazzi, 2566 Meridian Drive, Coquitlam. I have a question for clarification for items number 65 and 69. They're very unclear to me what is being proposed, and I would like a clarification for the public that are now watching this via internet, and for myself as to exactly what's being proposed with this Westbell development.
Mr. McIntyre.
6.5 and 6.9, they work together.
Thank you, Your Worship. Very briefly, 6.5 is it's a property on the north side of Galloway. And essentially what's being proposed is under the existing neighborhood plan, there was certain land use designations were set on those properties. And under this application, it's an amendment to change that, slightly shift the boundary of one of those land use designations along with the zoning. So it's going forward. There's a consultation process connection with that, as well as it's going forward to a public hearing. So that's item 6.5.
Yeah.
6.9, I believe, is another property down at Coast Meridian and David. And this one, again, consistent with the neighborhood plan, there was a convenience commercial at the corner of Coast Meridian and David Avenue, and a multifamily to the north and east. What is proposed is a slight shifting of the boundaries between the commercial area and the residential. So again, that triggers the need for a neighborhood plan amendment and a rezoning. And so this report brings that forward along with the accompanying Section 879 consultation. If there's more specific questions, we can speak after the meeting if the questioner asks.
So there are changes to the official community plan, both of them?
Through the chair, very slight proposed amendments.
It's a requirement that the Act presents to do a change to the OCP, even for a minor amendment to the boundaries.
Okay, well maybe I'll discuss this after. Thank you.
Thank you. Please come forward and identify yourself.
Frida Hart, 3507 Victoria Drive in Northeast Coquitlam.
Hi, Frida.
And it's on this number 10, the active grants eligibility. First of all, I don't have anybody attached to the Scouts, but in our area, you'll never get 60% children. There just isn't enough. And Lee School is right there, and it's, I don't know how many, mostly Port Coquitlam children, because all of Lincoln School are there now. So those kids, a lot of them would likely join that Scout troop, because it's in the area. So why should they be shut off from getting some sports equipment? Because you're never going to get 60% Coquitlam. Not in anything out there. We never have. And I hope that POCO doesn't come back and say, well, you can't come down to Hyde Creek because you live in Coquitlam, and you can't use the library, because you live in Coquitlam and we're in Poco. I mean, I think it opens up a can of worms that we really don't need. So maybe some thought could just be given on that for the Scouts. Thank you.
Yeah, well, I appreciate that. This has been a debate in council because there are others. There's, for example, a school right on the border where almost all the students attending are Coquitlam students, but it's technically in Port Coquitlam, and we had the same debate over whether or not in past years that could receive funding for playground equipment. This is a big challenge, and there's a can of worms ready to be opened here if we go that route. And you know, unfortunately, we've traditionally been oversubscribed. So it's a tough decision that council has to make as to how to deal with the fact that some of the applicants might be a very small percentage in some cases, a very small percentage Coquitlam residents. Ms. McKay has some additional comments.
Thank you so much for bringing your concern forward, and I just wonder if a possible way of moving forward, this obviously has been a long-standing issue, is that we could look at collaborating with our neighboring municipalities, because as you indicated, this may be an issue that they have as well in their boundary areas, and I would welcome the opportunity to open a dialogue with the other municipalities, with their staff, to see whether there aren't joint programs that they might be interested in participating with us in the future.
Well, if that would work, that's fine, but I don't think the Coquitlam Scouts should be denied some sports equipment just because it's mostly Coquitlam or Port Coquitlam children.
No, I agree. I wish we could offer the grants to everybody that applies, but unfortunately we have to draw the line at something.
Would it be worthwhile that they apply for casino grants? Would that make any difference? Is that the same eligibility?
Same eligibility.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions? Seeing none, thank you all for coming.